Batman and Robin is a misunderstood masterpiece. Like any type of media with a large fan base, especially a predominantly male fan base, the Batman films have always been on the receiving end of extremely high levels of scrutiny, rarely able to please the majority. In today's video, I'll be discussing the universally hated 1997 Batman and Robin film, and why I think it's actually a misunderstood masterpiece. Obviously, this is my opinion, and if you disagree, that's totally fine. Just don't be an asshole about it. Anyway, let's get into it. What I think a lot of people completely misunderstand about Joel Schumacher's Batman films is that they're meant to be campy, cartoonish, and over the top in a way that is reminiscent of the Batman film, comics, and TV shows of the 1960s. And taking that direction isn't even a rarity when it comes to live-action adaptations based off of other source material. Just look at The Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, or Clue.
Yes, I did it. I killed Yvette. I hated her so much. It flames on the side of my face.
Hey, I can look at myself naked.
Oh, brother.
While many critics tend to hyperfixate on the theatrical nature of Schumacher's Batman, this campiness wasn't something that he randomly introduced to the film franchise for the hell of it. It was already there. He just made it impossible to ignore. The camp in this Batman franchise actually began with Tim Burton. When Burton took over as director for the 1989 Batman film, he added a distinctly dark and gothic tone that was in stark contrast to earlier Batman adaptations, and as a result of the film's massive success, following issues of the Batman comics in the 90s became equally dark to appeal to increased public interest. But when Burton went on to make the sequel film, Batman Returns in 1992, he added back the camp and humor from the source material that he'd taken out of the first film. This juxtaposition between dark subject matter and outlandish humor is now a Tim Burton staple, and you can see this technique used in many of his other films like Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, and Dark Shadows. Campy characters were everywhere in Batman Returns, with Catwoman, the Penguin, and Max Schreck being theatrical in their own respective ways. This shift in tone isn't the least bit subtle either. In the first Batman film, the Joker's henchmen are generic crime goons, but in Batman Returns, Penguin's minions are literally members of a circus.
Just the pussy I've been looking for.
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier.
Burton also added sexual innuendo and adult humor to this film, which received backlash from parents who considered it inappropriate for children.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
When Schumacher took over as director for 1995's Batman Forever, he had to deal with the difficult task of making the franchise more mainstream and accessible, per Warner Brothers' instructions. After Michael Keaton passed on returning, disliking the turn the franchise was taking, Val Kilmer was cast as Bruce Wayne. And while yes, he is very nice to look at, he hardly seemed like the brooding, emotionally repressed Batman type that had been established in the prior films.
My parents were murdered in front of me when I was just a kid.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through. The bat signal is not a beeper.
Batman Forever is distinctive in comparison to the previous films, not only because of its new Batman, but visually and in tone as well. With Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face and Jim Carrey as the Riddler, the film appealed to a younger demographic who needed a laugh every few minutes.
Here's a good one.
No. There is a good one.
While most people vilify Batman and Robin as the worst film in the franchise, Batman Forever is actually my least favorite. The constant shifts in tone are enough to give you whiplash.
It's so dark and gothic and disgustingly decadent. It's so bright and chipper and conservative.
And Jim Carrey's energy steals the show, which wouldn't be a bad thing if Riddler was the main character, but he isn't.
You were supposed to understand. I'll make you understand. I'm Batman.
Unfortunately, the female lead in this film, played by the gorgeous Nicole Kidman, is very boring. I miss the snark and charm of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and even Vicky Vale served some kind of purpose. Chase Meridian is just your average sexed-up comic book woman.
What is it about the wrong kind of man? In grade school, it was guys with earrings. College, motorcycles, leather jackets. Now, black rubber.
At least Sugar and Spice, Two-Face's assistants, look amazing and have a lot of fun interactions. Joel Schumacher knows how to make girls look good.
How come you don't look so good in that suit?
And I will say, I love the very 90s neon aesthetic this film employs, as well as its cartoonish costuming choices, which we're going to see make a return in Batman and Robin. After the financial success of Batman Forever, Warner Brothers immediately commissioned Schumacher to start on a sequel, and we got 1997's Batman and Robin. Many people working on the production have stated in the years since its release that from the get-go they were concerned about the film, with Chris O'Donnell, Robin, stating that he felt like, quote, he was making a kid's toy commercial, and Joel Schumacher is quoted as saying, quote, remember everyone, this is a cartoon, while on set.
I'm a lover, not a fighter. That's why every Poison Ivy action figure comes complete with him.
I can see why hardcore fans of the franchise and of the Batman comics would take offense to this, but you need to remember, Warner Brothers already expressed that money was the goal back when Batman Forever was in production. The fact that they could now make a film that could capitalize on the toy craze of the 90s no doubt influenced the film. If anything, you should be mad at Warner Brothers, not Schumacher. One thing that I think hurts the film is that there seem to be two very different ideas of what it was. Some people seem to be thinking of the movie as a continuation of Burton's Batman, which was obviously a mistake on their part. Whereas other people on the production, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Uma Thurman for instance, understood the ridiculousness of what they were doing, and it shows in their performances. They're constantly hamming it up, as if they're winking at the camera, laughing with the audience. They've embraced the campy, cartoonish tone.
Gotta go! So many people to kill, so little time.
That's my exit cue.
You two boys aren't gonna start fighting over little old me now, are you?
When watching Batman and Robin, you can tell that George Clooney, Alicia Silverstone, and Chris O'Donnell are trying to play it straight, like they would if this were a run-of-the-mill superhero film. And it winds up with shaky line deliveries that lack confidence and can't pull off the baddie, pun intended, writing.
And you are?
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about bad person or bad woman?
Bruce, it's me, Barbara. I found the Batcave.
We gotta get those locks changed.
She knows who we are.
Guess we'll just have to kill her.
Yep, we'll kill her later. We have work to do.
Who invited you?
I was just hanging around.
I thought you were going to stay in the museum. Round up some thugs.
How about nice to see you? Glad you're here to save my life. You're pretty good at this, little girl.
Well, watch and learn, little boy. Using feminine wiles to get what you want, trading on your looks. Read a book, sister. That passive-aggressive number went out long ago. Chicks like you give women a bad name.
The film doesn't take itself seriously. It's having as much fun as it can, and I don't understand how so many people missed that. There's Batman on ice, performing an X-game maneuver down a frozen dinosaur. Poison Ivy emerges from a huge fluffy gorilla suit in what was no doubt thousands of people's sexual awakening.
I'll bring everything you see here, plus everything you don't.
Batman has his own branded credit card, for Christ's sakes. Did they need to add a laugh track to make it more obvious that this film was supposed to be funny? The humorous shift in tone upset a lot of fans, but in comparison to, say, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, it's not nearly as drastic or jarring when watching all of the films back to back. Yes, 1997's Batman and Robin is a very different film than 1989's Batman, but the descent into camp is actually gradual and understandable if you think about it logically and compare the films sequentially. There's another thing that I think a lot of fans of superhero source material need to understand. The movie doesn't have to be an exact copy of the comics. And you want to know why? The comics retcon and contradict themselves constantly and have hundreds of storylines and arcs. How in the world do you create a single cohesive film based around that? And this isn't just the case for Batman. Any film adaptation of printed work should be allowed to drift from the source material as long as it makes sense. It shouldn't be a requirement to read every single Batman comic to like and understand the movies. Stop trying to make us do homework to watch a movie. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of the hatred, hostility, and aversion to these Joel Schumacher films is that they're gay as hell. To many fanboys, Bruce Wayne/Batman is supposed to be this super macho manly man fighting crime, and as such, many men idolize him. He's not a magical alien like Superman, he's just an average guy who turned himself into a hero. So there's no doubt that seeing their favorite male character being filmed the way that women are was too much for their hetero minds to handle. Comics regularly sexualize their female characters, giving them impossible body types and ridiculous costumes. Joel Schumacher flipped that trope on its head. In recent years, other superhero content, like Watchmen, The Boys, and Shazam, feature ridiculous superhero costumes that reinforce Schumacher's point. Nobody looks like that. At least, no one with a healthy relationship with their body. So why not make an absurd costume that creates that body for them?
Always go a size smaller. Makes me look slimmer.
I won't deny that I'm a fan of Joel Schumacher's work in general. Many of his other critically reviled films, like Phantom of the Opera and The Number 23, are films that I genuinely get a kick out of. Phantom especially. I rewatched that thing constantly as a kid and could probably recite every line from it. So sure, call me biased if you want, but I don't think that makes me wrong. Do I think Batman and Robin is without flaws? Obviously not, but I don't think that makes it a bad movie. Just because a film isn't technically perfect or has a deeper meaning doesn't mean it's trash. And I especially don't think a director should ever apologize for their work unless it actively caused harm. And no, rubber nipples on a batsuit aren't harmful. If you're anti-Batman and Robin, ask yourself why, and I challenge you to rewatch all of the films again. Is it really as bad as we've made it out to be? Or is it a fun, campy romp that's been misunderstood for years? I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you soon. Bye!